When it's convenient for you to go and see them, do so. But don't hurt yourself in the life that you have to live on the outside to go and make them feel comfortable. This is an unfortunate truth. They made a bad decision and now they're in prison. But prison is not designed for comfort. Hello there and welcome to Fridays with Tab and Chance. I am Tabitha Brown and this is my husband.
Chance, what's up?
Bring the beat in. Fridays with Tab and Chance. Ba-dum-bum-bum. Fridays with Tab and Chance. I felt like today you was gonna prolong it.
You just you wanted a solo.
No, I thought you was going.
No, you wanted a solo.
No, I thought that.
No, you want a solo. If you want to do a show by yourself, just say that, Flash.
Welcome to Fridays with Tab and Chance. Because of the topic today, I'm not going to, jump on Chance because I don't want to become a conversation. Today we're talking about incarceration. And so, I like my freedom. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna just act like you didn't, try to threaten me and come at me just now.
I didn't threaten you. I didn't come at you. I just called you what you are. Flash.
It's
lonely at the top.
Yeah, it's lonely at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Of the cell.
Come on, baby, let's go.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
So anywho, stay focused. We are talking about incarceration. Family members who have been incarcerated, you personally who may have been incarcerated, how you deal with living, right, your life while incarceration is happening within your family. This is a personal conversation for me. For those of you who have read my books, I've talked about this in my books. My nephew is in prison and has been for the last 13 years, with about 8 more to go if he does all of his time. And for me, and I know for my family, for my sister, it's her only child, when your loved ones go to prison, a part of you goes to prison with them, right? Although we are out and we have our freedom and we're able to live our life, there's still a part of you that you're like, it's not here, right? That's your family. For me, I know watching my sister in the beginning, the first few years, or really probably the first 10 years or so, I'll say up until COVID, she was almost like running herself to death, trying to make sure she was there every week to see him or every, month and, do everything that she could because there was a certain amount of guilt attached to him going to prison. And conversations that she and I had over time, me just trying to work with her to help her understand, although he was very young when this happened, it still is not your fault. He made his own decision. And no matter what season of motherhood you were in, right? Because a lot of times my sister was a very young mama. And so a lot of times when we're young or we feel like we weren't the best parent, we attach whatever our kids do wrong to ourselves. And we feel guilty because of that, because we feel like if we had done something different, they would have been different or made a different choice. And while there are some instances that may be true, we're all our own individual, capable of making our own decisions, right? And so I know for parents, a lot of parents, grandparents, even my daddy, who is the best daddy in the world, in my opinion, he even had his own sense of guilt. Even me, as his aunt, right? I played a large role in helping raise my nephew. We're only 10 and a half years apart, but that was still part of my responsibility growing up as a teenager. Like, oh, okay, make sure you look after your nephew. And I even had guilt of moving to California because I was like, dang, we should have brought him with us. He wouldn't have been, there's these things that go in these scenarios that you go over and over in your head, but we are not to blame for someone else's thoughts and actions, right? In the moment when they make a decision, that could be one quick decision that changes the course of their life. However, because when they do go to jail or to prison, those scenarios get played over and over. And that's what I mean when I say a part of us gets locked up too. Because now we have a part of us that thinks we could have changed something. That part of our mind is now imprisoned until we allow ourselves to release that thought and that guilt. Some people never release it until their family members come home. So I wanted to talk about it. That's my intro to it, a long intro, but how do you feel, babe? Like, when it comes to, and Tremaine is my closest, that's my nephew. He is immediate family for me. We live together. We grew up, same house. But I have many cousins who were in prison for 18 years, 5 years, couple years. So it's not new to me. It's just that this one is so very close to me and has been. But when it comes to family members being locked up, how do you feel? Or do you feel the same way?
How do I feel about?
Do you feel like a part of you gets locked up too? Is there a part of you that, I guess when it's very close, because there's some people that cut their family off when they get locked up. But what's your?
I still don't. I'm not. You're asking me how do I feel when a family member goes to prison?
I'm saying, what's your take on it? Like, do you feel that a part of you does the time with them?
Yeah, I feel like even with me not being his blood relative, right? Even when we heard about his situation, I felt like you. It's the first time I've ever heard you say it from that, and me be able to identify. Because one of the things I thought about was a conversation that I had with him prior to trying to give him from a law enforcement background some insight on the things that I had seen. And I thought, man, maybe I wasn't as transparent as I needed to be with some of the things that I had told him that I had experienced and seen here in Los Angeles and what I knew about the prison system. So I kind of wore and still feel, some kind of responsibility. Maybe when I was back playing ball with him, and maybe I didn't tell him enough of how bright his future could be. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
And then with my relative that I have that is, doing a ridiculous amount of time, there is a different feeling because, well, with both of them, right? The crimes that the two of them, I'm not gonna say committed, well, what they're locked up for.
They got charged with.
But they got charged with and convicted for, right? Are bad. So there's a sense of shame and embarrassment too that comes with that. That I think sometimes family members don't know how to acknowledge that you wear, right? Because they committed such a heinous or bad crime.
Yeah.
You think too, like, man, was his upbringing not enough? Did he not get the message? How did I contribute it? How did I contribute to this decision making? Then those are things that I think that also cross your mind and you know, and then you don't know how to process it, because you want to put the shoe on the other foot. And this is what I was sharing with Tiff off camera, is that, you know, it's easy for us to put the shoe on the foot of how it makes us feel. But then you got to put the shoe on the foot of how it made the person that the crime was committed against,
Their families.
how their family feels. And when I think about your sister, I know she has dealt with that just from some of the decisions that she was making early on with the relationship with the other family and some of the encounters. It's just one of those just waters that is just difficult to navigate in the physical and in the mental. You don't know how to move in that space, but dealing with it and you know, it's difficult.
Right.
You know, it's difficult.
I mean, that's one of the questions that we receive. Like, how do you navigate the guilt of speaking to the other family, or even speaking to your family member who's incarcerated because of the crime they did was so bad, right? And my thought on that is the first thing is we have to remember that we didn't do the crime,
Yeah.
right? Just because you are family of someone who committed a crime doesn't make you guilty, right? Now, I do believe that how we react can cause it to be worse or better. So I think ignoring it is the worst thing that we can do. You know, when it comes to the family members who have been affected, I think that we can, because especially when like a life is lost, and not just in death, but there could be multiple people who all are involved, who all get locked up for a life sentence. And that life on the outside is lost for that, you know, amount of time. I think you can always, as a parent, there's a sense of like apologizing on the behalf of the decision made. I feel like that's the thing, like when it comes to like my sister or even myself, and just say like, I'm so sorry that this has happened, you know, but there's nothing that we can do to change it. We didn't actually commit the crime, but not ignoring the feelings of others, right? I think that's the first step in that situation. But then I also think that when it comes to the person who committed the crime, your family member, and I know this is what happens when I say some people, they cut off all communication with their family member, their child, their brother, their husband, their sister, whatever the case may be, depending on the crime. Now, I do believe that forgiveness is always, it has to be a factor, right? That we can forgive when we are ready to do so. Forgive them for the crime that they have committed. And I think that when you don't have communication with them at all, you don't know if they've, you know, asked for forgiveness or forgiven themselves or where they are in their walk, even though they're incarcerated. But I do believe if they are to get out one day, unless they're in there with no eligibility of parole or, you know, it was something that is just in your mind, you can't bring yourself to have a conversation with them, like something very terrible, right? I get that. But if it's something else, I think you take your time to process and forgive, but then have conversation.
Who we talking about though? Like
This,
I'm talking
just
about
in general.
just in general.
Yeah, because there's
like,
sometimes there's like for me, just on a personal, if there was a person who, you know, in my family member who went to prison for raping children or murdering, like doing something crazy, that type of stuff you see on these shows, you be like, oh my God, that's like, we ain't really got nothing to talk about, right? In my heart, I can forgive you, but here you can't even hear me because this can't be right.
Yeah.
But if there's something that a drug deal went bad or, you know, it was gang violence, it was stuff that you caught up in mess. Somebody still lost their life, but this is something that you feel like, okay, over time, I can forgive them for their actions. I want them to know that, right? then move forward with having conversations with them. I think there's people who go to prison, and this is just from me talking to my nephew and, hearing other stories throughout the years with other people that, he's encountered, even receiving letters from, some of his friends. Some of them, their crimes may not have been, quote unquote, as bad, right? Maybe it was only drugs, but their family is so mad at them for even doing that, they just cut them off. Or they never really had family in the beginning. Mm-hmm. No one is encouraging them. No one is talking to them. So they feel abandoned even there. It's almost like that becomes their home and their family, which is why a lot of people, when they get out, they end up going right back.
I get what you're saying.
Right? Mm-hmm. So I think that, like with me and my nephew, we talk weekly, sometimes every day. There's a texting system that they have. I do something with him called a word of the day. I send him a word and tell him like what that word means, for the day. And sometimes I even share that with y'all. And now he will send me a word. Like today's word he sent me was consistent. He said, if we're consistent in something, no matter what that one thing is, we become great at it. So we got to be careful with what the thing is that we're consistent in doing. And just knowing that he is now in this frame of mind of thinking about a word of the day. Because if I don't send him a text, he'll be like, hey, auntie, what's the word for the day? Like, it's something he looks forward to. Mm-hmm. I think that we have to make sure they still feel human. Right? Especially if they are going to be getting out. We have to make sure there's a relationship that's still being nurtured so they don't get out and feel like a stranger, especially if they got to come right back into the family. This is my own opinion. I think forgiveness allows us to do that. Especially also if they're very young when they went in. We have family members, they 17, 16 years old, 18 years old. Life hadn't even got started yet. You in the wrong place, wrong time, made the wrong decision, running with the wrong people, and now your life is gone for 25 years or 20 years. So I think we can set aside, not set it aside, but like once we work through that, our own guilt, our own feelings, to try to nurture the relationship, if that makes sense what I'm trying to say.
It does. What I think about, though, is that people's principles, mm-hmm. Things that people are going to stand on, is where you're going to have conflict with that. We're all different in how we forgive and how much time we need to forgive, and then on how we're willing to share our time. I think that's where a lot of it can get a little difficult. When you're ready to forgive or when you're ready to share your time may be different from when I'm ready to forgive and share mine. Mm-hmm. What you think is good as opposed to what I think is good is different. And that goes to be said about punishment and everything. And it just murky waters. It's gonna always be based on the person you're dealing with. I know what I think about in terms of prison is where a lot of conflict within family comes is visitation. How much visitation and how much attention are we willing to give to this situation, right? Mm-hmm. Me personally, I don't even like the idea, and this might seem odd coming from me, considering I was in law enforcement. I don't like prisons. Mm-hmm. Visiting a prison for anyone outside of my immediate family is going to be and even with them, it's very difficult for me to even wrap my head around. I don't like them at all. They give me anxiety. Even with my experience in law enforcement and having to, unfortunately, arrest people and change their lives by taking them there, I hate them. All right. So when the topic comes up of, or are you going to go and visit? I know that has been a very sensitive subject for people. And then too, with taking kids to go into prisons. My views on that, I just don't like the idea of kids visiting a prison. Now, that's just my opinion. Now, shoes on the other foot, and I'm in there. I want my son. I would love to. I love the idea of always staying connected to my son, but I also don't like the idea of him coming and seeing me under those conditions, in those circumstances. If I'm thinking about it, obviously from never being in that situation, but I know that sometimes is the things that people struggle with. Then, not to mention the amount of distance, depending on the crime that you've committed, that can be put in between you and the family member, and your lifestyle, the means, things of that nature that can make it really stressful on both parties. And for you to ask, let's say for instance, your granny, you get me, to come into that kind of environment, whether it be 45 minutes up the road,
or hours,
the pat downs and things of that nature that granny is going to have to go through to come in there, I just don't agree with, right? It's just certain things that I don't want to leave unsaid, or want people to think about in terms of, the things that create distance and conflict as it pertains to people who have been in prison. And then you got to go back to disappointment weighs on people sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. Forgiveness and grace is dependent upon the person. You commit something, and then too, belief in it. Whether that makes a difference. You thou shalt not kill. There are some people who look at that and there's no circumstance in which you do it, whether it's self-defense or not, is you should not do it. We all have those defining things, those things that we are just set on, and God made us how he made us. All pieces of the puzzle that cannot be undone. I am very particular about certain things. Very, very particular about certain things. I'm like you. You get convicted for one of those I'm not going to be so quick to forgive, come and see you. I'm not going to do it. I'm not as forgiving as most with certain things. Now, with other things that I feel like are the government played a role, our culture was affected by it differently. If you know what I'm getting at.
It's a different process.
Certain things, I'm just like, hey, that's different to me. It's just me though. But a lot of times I keep a lot of that stuff to myself. I don't try to push it on other people. But I just, felt the need to say that because it's very, very murky waters to try to get through when you're talking about forgetting those and keeping contact and you get what I mean?
That goes back to you doing the time with them, right? It takes a lot out of you to do that. You said something that is important, and this is something I always remind my daddy, I always remind my sister, and I always remind my nephew. Like when you're talking about your granny, you want your granny to go through all of the travel to come see you, the process of, how you got to dress. You can't wear no wild bra. You can't wear certain clothes. You got to go in a certain way, right? I always remind my daddy and my sister when they be like, we ain't seen him in a long time, like, he is in prison. Right? I tell my nephew when he complaining, you're in prison. This is prison. It's not created to make you comfortable. Right? And so we don't have to go out of our way to make you comfortable. It is a privilege that you will get if we get to come and see you. But it was not designed to make you comfortable. That's prison.
All right, so that goes to another thing. It's a privilege if what? You said, what did you say?
If we as family members decide to go through the motions of coming to visit, right?
So the other thing is to
What I'm trying to establish is expectation,
yeah.
right? When you are incarcerated, there can't be a necessary, like, not necessarily, like, you can't expect your family to just be there every week. You're asking them to stop their life on the outside because you are now in prison. That's not fair, right? And so for those parents and grandparents, aunties, uncles, girlfriends, wives, husbands, don't run yourself into the ground trying to meet the expectation of a prisoner, right? And I understand there's also fear that comes along with, well, when they get out, they're gonna be mad at me, blah, 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 blah. But this is what happens. It's unfortunate. There's ways that you can still keep in touch. When it's convenient for you to go and see them, do so. But don't hurt yourself in the life that you have to live on the outside to go and make them feel comfortable. This is an unfortunate truth. They made a bad decision and now they're in prison. But prison is not designed for comfort, right? So that's the thing I used to have to, tell my sister. She was killing herself trying to go up and down the road all the time, driving it hours whenever he got moved, right? We can't devote our life to that while also living the life that we have to live on the outside. Yes, I love my nephew. I also help support him and send him money and books and magazines and all the different things. But I'm not going to stop my life when I have children, I have a husband, I have a job, like I have a career, to be like, oh, nope, I gotta stop, I can't do it, I gotta go. There is time that we can put aside. But I have to make sure it works for my schedule on the outside, because I didn't make the decision. I can write you, that I can do. I can accept your calls when we can. Everybody can't, necessarily afford calls. But, they have systems in place where they can call and you don't get charged for it. Like back in the day, it used to always be collect. Those are the things that we can do to keep them encouraged, but also explain that to them with love. You have to understand that this is prison, and I can't just make it easy for you. I can do the best that I can, but you are not my priority. My life on the outside is now my priority, but you are still here. I still love you, and I'm encouraging you, and I want to make sure that we have a relationship that's nurtured so that we don't become strangers when you come out, with love. But to them grandmas and them aunties and them daddies and uncles and y'all out there hurting yourself to try to drive 8 hours and 6 hours all the time, don't hurt yourself to do that. You didn't make that decision. They did, with love.
I also think it's important, what I was getting at was to make sure that we not fail to mention the responsibility on the person on the other side too. If you calling, if you writing, and you don't, regardless of how we feel about prison and what it allows and does not allow, you don't seem like you have no remorse, there's no growth, there's no maturing, there's no any of that. That can be, that is not going to encourage anybody to do anything. Mm-hmm. I know me. I'm not going to say anybody. I just know with me, I'm not. It's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. And the excuse that I got to do things in order to survive in here can only be used so many times. I just wanted to say that I feel like it's important, and I think that by preparing for their release, family members need to hear that as well. Don't ignore that, and allow your guilt to get the best of you to where you are ignoring obvious signs that they're still continuing with the same behavior. They could, because all that's going to happen is if you ignore it, there's a large possibility that when they get out, they can repeat the process or something very close to it because they haven't matured. Listen forward and encourage growth. And how you do that, I can't tell you how to do it, but encourage change and work together is what I would suggest. Both parties have to do a part if you want to make it work.
Be honest, right? You do. I feel like we are obligated to be honest with our loved ones who are, in prison. If they ask, if you're able to say, have the communication, I feel like be honest in your communication. Especially if you know that they did whatever they said they did, whatever they did, the crime, if you know without the shadow of a doubt, oh yeah, they did this, and they still acting like they ain't at fault, even though they know they did it, but they want to blame everybody except themselves. Be honest with them. Like, listen, you're gonna have to do the time for the crime that you committed. Don't side with them so that they stay locked up in this mindset that it's everybody else's fault but theirs. Help them realize they got to take ownership. Help them realize that they have a responsibility to themselves to admit their wrongs, right? And now you do the time for that. But also, if you realize that they're not getting any better, like he said, if they are not taking ownership, they still talking the same, they still, basically
just passing
tripping.
Time.
Right.
They're just passing time.
You don't have to subject yourself to that. And you can let them know, listen, I can already tell that this time ain't doing nothing for you. You still don't get it. That can also be your last conversation for a while. I'm going to give you a little bit more time to see if you're going to allow yourself to change. And you're going to do some work on yourself while you're in there. What will you learn while you're in there? I've had to do that as well, right? I've had to take a break and be like, you need some time to really think about what's happening. Sometimes you got to get people together with truth and love. They're going to be all right. You're going to be all right too. It's going to hurt. But I think lying to yourself and lying to them does not benefit anybody, right? So you still going to be hurting. They still going to be hurting. You may as well hurt with the truth than a lie. Because you can live with the truth. That lie, honey, you're going to have to keep telling yourself another one just to get by, and vice versa. So I will say that I do think it is important when it feels well in your spirit to nurture those relationships, stay in contact with, family, friends, in the same circle. Make sure that their name is not forgotten. They're not forgotten. If you can, write a letter. They need that. It is helpful, especially if they're coming home. Seek forgiveness, right? Try your best within to forgive so that you can have a genuine relationship. But don't overexert yourself. Do it within reason that you feel comfortable. But I do think it's important to have a check-in and allow them to check in and have those relationships. So it's not a stranger coming home. That's my thought on it.
All right, baby.
Yeah.
I think we did our job.
I know it's such a tough conversation for so many people. My heart goes out to all, parents, grandparents, families. Everybody involved. I know it's hard. I know it's tough. Give yourself grace, right? Allow yourself not to feel the weight of the guilt. You're doing the best that you can. And if you're not, one day at a time, until you feel like you're doing the best that you can in your situation. But every situation is different, right? Some people, forgiveness is not in your journey right now, and that's all right too, okay? But try to take your steps when you can. And I pray and hope that, your loved ones are home soon, if that is in their journey. And for all those who've been affected, Always praying and sending love and big hugs to everybody. And yeah, that's it, I think, for now.
All righty.
All right? All right. Well, until the next time, honey, y'all go about y'all business and have the most amazing day. But even if you can't have a good one, don't you dare go messing up nobody else's here. Love y'all. God bless y'all. Bye. Thank you for watching this episode, honey. And if you liked it, go ahead and click right here for more of those episodes.
And if you haven't already subscribed, please remember to do so.
Very good.